Damon, at 39 years old, was a man who understood the logic of machinery. As a diesel mechanic, he made his living, a respectable $64,000 a year, by listening to the subtle ticks and groans of engines, diagnosing the dissonance, and restoring order. His hands, calloused and often traced with grease that soap couldn't quite conquer, could break down a Cummins engine and rebuild it from the block up. He understood that for every action, there was a reaction. For every input, an output. It was a world of clear, unshakable rules. His life outside the garage, however, operated on a different, more confounding logic. For 6 years, on the first Friday of every month, he performed a ritual that had nothing to do with pistons or fuel injectors. He would sit at the small, $250 oak desk in the corner of his living room, pull out a checkbook from his personal account, and write a check for $1,450. The payee was always the same: Memorial Properties, LLC. The memo line was also always the same: Rent 124B Memorial Trace Circle. This was the rent for his mother-in-law, Gloria's duplex. For 72 consecutive months, he had paid it. That was a total of $104,400. He knew the exact number because, like a mechanic logging parts and labor, he logged everything. After writing each check, he would drive to a nearby copy shop and make a photocopy for his records, a habit that started the very first month. He kept the copies in a gray, fireproof lockbox he'd bought for $79 at Home Depot, filed neatly by year. The ritual was a silent one. His wife, Tanya, never watched him write it. She never thanked him for it. It was simply an expected function of their marriage, as automatic and unquestioned as the sun rising. In the beginning, he had imagined it as a noble act, a way to support the woman who had raised his wife. But 6 years of silence had eroded that feeling, replacing it with the cold, heavy weight of obligation. The check wasn't a gift, it was a tax, a fee for being Tanya's husband. And as he signed his name on the 72nd check, the ink from his $3 Pilot G2 pen felt less like a signature and more like a surrender. He had no idea this would be the last one he ever wrote. He didn't know that in less than an hour, the confusing logic of his home life would suddenly become as clear and as brutal as a cracked engine block. What if he hadn't gone to drop it off that day? What if he'd just mailed it like he sometimes did? But some part of him, some deep, unvoiced need for a crumb of acknowledgement, made him drive the 25 minutes from their modest 3-bedroom house in the Heights to the manicured, tree-lined streets of Memorial. He felt the weight of that simple decision for years to come, a weight that would ultimately become his liberation. For anyone watching Damon's life, they would see a man who seemed to have it all under control. But they wouldn't see the slow, grinding pressure building under the surface. A pressure that was about to find its breaking point. Have you ever felt like your kindness was being treated like an obligation? So many of us have been there, and Damon's story might feel very familiar. The facade of their life was built on a foundation of these unsaid things. Damon and Tanya lived a life that looked normal, even comfortable, from the outside. Their home, a 1,600 square foot bungalow they'd bought 5 years ago with a 3.8% interest mortgage, was neat and tidy. The lawn was always cut, the hedges trimmed. Inside, the furniture was a mix of practical IKEA pieces and a few more expensive items Tanya had insisted on, like the plush, $2,800 sectional sofa that took up most of the living room. On the walls hung framed photos of their wedding, a smiling black couple, his deep brown skin glowing next to her radiant, lighter complexion. In the photos, they looked happy, their future a wide-open road. Damon's life was one of careful budgeting. His $64,000 salary, after taxes, came out to about $4,200 a month. Their mortgage was $2,200. After utilities, car insurance for his 2014 Ford F-150, and her 2016 Honda Accord, and groceries. There wasn't much left. Then came Gloria's rent, $1,450, a black hole that swallowed nearly a third of his take-home pay before he even saw it. He felt its absence in small, painful ways every day. He drove his F-150 with 187,000 miles on it, its engine a familiar, comforting rumble. When the transmission started slipping, the quote for a rebuild was $2,400. He spent 3 weekends in his own garage, using his own tools, and ordering $950 in parts online to fix it himself. He told Tanya he enjoyed the work, and a part of him did, but the other part knew it was a choice made of necessity, not passion. Tanya, who made $42,000 a year as a marketing assistant, saw the world differently. Her money was her money. His money was their money. She loved the idea of luxury, of nice things that signaled success. One Tuesday evening, she was scrolling through her phone, her face illuminated by the screen. "Oh, babe, my friend from work went to Uchi last night. Look at this." She showed him a photo of an elaborate sushi platter, glistening and perfect. She said it was amazing. We should go for our anniversary. Damon glanced at the photo, then looked up Uchi's menu online. He saw the prices for the omakase tasting menus, $195 per person. With drinks and a tip, it would be a $500 dinner. He felt a familiar clenching in his stomach. "Looks nice, T," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Maybe a little pricey, though." Tanya sighed, the sound sharp with disappointment. She locked her phone and set it down on their $400 coffee table with a soft click. "Pricey? Damon, it's our anniversary. Can't we do something special for once? My friends are all going on vacations to Cabo. They're buying new cars. We just work." "We could go on a vacation," he offered, trying to find a compromise. "We could save up for a few months, go somewhere nice, maybe a cruise." He knew a 7-day Caribbean cruise could be had for about $1,500 if they booked in advance. She scoffed. "Save up? How are we supposed to save up? There's never anything left." The words hung in the air between them, thick and unspoken. "Because of your mother's rent." He wanted to say it. He burned to say it. But he knew the fight it would cause. He had tried to have that conversation once, 2 years ago. It had been a disaster. He had gently suggested that maybe Gloria could look for a smaller place, something more affordable. A 1-bedroom in a less expensive neighborhood might be closer to $900, he'd said. Tanya's face had hardened instantly. "My mother? You want my 65-year-old mother, who worked her whole life to move out of her home, the home she loves, after everything she's been through since Daddy died?" "I'm not saying kick her out," Damon had pleaded. "I'm just saying $1,450 a month is a lot for us. It's more than half our mortgage payment was at the time." "It's my mother, Damon. Are you saying you want to abandon her, put her on the street?" "I can't believe how selfish you are. You knew my situation when you married me. You knew she depended on me. On us." The way she said us made it clear she meant you. The conversation had ended with her in tears and him apologizing, feeling like a villain for simply stating a mathematical fact. He never brought it up again. The $1,450 was a permanent fixture, a third resident in their marriage. So instead of arguing about the $500 dinner, he just said, "You're right. We'll figure something out for the anniversary." They ended up going to a local steakhouse, a $150 meal that was still a stretch, and Tanya had spent most of it looking at her phone, a shadow of resentment on her face. The silence that followed them home was more expensive than any dinner. The small cuts of disrespect, the dismissive sighs and casual cruelties began to accumulate. forming a pattern of escalating betrayal that Damon could feel even if he couldn't fully articulate it. Each instance was a small weight added to his shoulders, pressing him down. The first major incident happened about a year before the end. Gloria had called Tanya on a Sunday morning, her voice a frantic whisper that Damon could hear from across the room. The rent check, which he usually dropped off on Friday, had been delayed. He'd had to work a 16-hour shift on a fleet of trucks that needed to be on the road by Monday, so he hadn't been able to write it until Saturday evening. He had planned to drop it off that Sunday afternoon. "He hasn't brought it yet?" Tanya said into her phone, her back to Damon. "Mama, I'm so sorry. I'm sure he just forgot. It's been a busy weekend." She turned to face him, her hand covering the receiver, her eyes blazing with an anger that felt wildly out of proportion. "Did you forget my mother's rent?" she hissed. "No, I didn't forget," Damon said calmly, holding up his hands. "I had to work late Friday and all day yesterday. I was going to take it over this afternoon." "This afternoon? It's due on the 1st, Damon. The landlord has a late fee if it's not there by the 5th. Today is the 4th. You're cutting it close. She's worried sick." "It's never been late in 5 years, Tanya. It's not going to be late this time. I'll take it over right now." She relayed this to Gloria, then listened for a moment. "He says he's coming now, Mama. Yes, I know. I'll talk to him." She hung up and fixed him with a glare. She was embarrassed. She thought she was going to have to call the landlord and beg. "You can't just let it slip your mind like that. It's a priority." "It didn't slip my mind," he repeated, the words feeling useless. "I had to work. Other people work, Damon, and they still manage their responsibilities," she shot back, grabbing her $400 Kate Spade purse from the counter. "I'm going over there. Just bring the check and leave it. I don't want her to be more upset." She walked out, the door slamming behind her. He stood alone in the kitchen, the checkbook on the counter feeling like an accusation. He wasn't a partner. He was a functionary, a walking ATM who was malfunctioning. A few months later, another front in the war of attrition opened up. They were at Gloria's duplex for her 66th birthday. Damon had brought a thoughtful, if modest, gift. A high-end, $120 digital photo frame he'd preloaded with hundreds of family pictures, including many of Tanya's late father. Gloria had given it a cursory glance. "Oh, that's technological," she'd said, setting it aside. Later, as they ate the birthday cake Damon had picked up from the bakery for $45, Gloria sighed dramatically. "My old television is just on its last legs. The picture is all fuzzy on one side. I can barely watch my programs." She looked pointedly at Tanya, but her gaze slid to Damon. "Brenda next door just got one of those new smart TVs, a big Samsung. Hangs right on the wall like a painting." Damon knew where this was going. He kept his eyes on his plate. Tanya, however, picked up the cue immediately. "Oh, we should look into that for you, Mama. Maybe as a late birthday present." "Oh, I couldn't ask," Gloria said, waving a dismissive hand, her bracelets jangling. "They're so expensive." "We can manage," Tanya said, looking directly at Damon, her expression a mixture of challenge and command. Later that night in the car on the way home, Tanya started in. "I think a 55-inch would be good for her living room. I saw one on sale at Best Buy for $899. Damon took a deep breath. "Tanya, we can't afford to buy your mom a $900 television." "What do you mean we can't afford it? It's for my mother. Her TV is broken." "Her TV isn't broken. It's just old. And we don't have a spare $900. The property taxes on the house are due next month. That's $3,500 we have to have ready." "So you'll figure it out," she said, her voice turning cold and hard. "You always do." "No," Damon said, and the word felt foreign in his mouth. It was a complete sentence he so rarely used with her. No, I can't figure it out. There's no money to figure out. We are not buying her a television. The silence in the car was absolute. It was a declaration of war. For the next week, Tanya treated him like a ghost. She moved through the house around him, her body never brushing his, her eyes never meeting his. She cooked for herself, slept pressed against the far edge of their queen-sized bed, and answered his questions with single, clipped words. It was a suffocating, lonely punishment. He was being ostracized for refusing to take on yet another expense, for drawing a line in the sand of his own financial solvency. He felt a profound sense of injustice. He was already paying for her roof, and now he was being punished for not paying for her entertainment too. The final scene of the prelude to his discovery was the cruelest. It was the month before that fateful June day. He had stopped by Gloria's on his way home from work, still in his grease-stained work clothes. He hated doing that, feeling that she was judging the honest dirt on his hands, but he'd had a long day and just wanted to get the errand over with. He knocked on the door, and Gloria opened it, a look of distaste flickering across her face as she took in his appearance. "Oh, it's you?" "Hey, Gloria," he said, holding out the envelope with the check. "Just dropping this off." She didn't reach for it. She just stood there, blocking the doorway. "You know, the landlord was by yesterday checking the smoke detectors. He mentioned he's thinking of raising the rent next year. Inflation, he said." She looked at him expectantly. Damon felt a surge of cold dread. "Okay," he said, his voice flat. "Well, I'm just telling you so you can prepare," she said, as if discussing his own budget. "It will probably be another $100 or so." He just stared at her, speechless. He was already drowning, and she was calmly describing the next bucket of water she planned to pour over his head. Tanya chose that moment to walk up behind her mother, a glass of iced tea in her hand. She saw the look on Damon's face. "What's wrong?" "I was just telling him about the rent increase," Gloria said. Tanya sighed, not at her mother, but at Damon. "Don't make that face, Damon. It is what it is. We'll handle it." "We?" he finally managed to say. "Tanya, we are barely handling it now." "Oh, stop being so dramatic," Tanya snapped, her patience gone. "It's money. You make good money. It's the least you can do for my mother. Honestly, you should be grateful you're in a position to help." Grateful. The word hit him like a physical blow. Grateful to be handing over a third of his income? Grateful to be postponing his own life, his own dreams, his own financial security? Gloria finally took the envelope from his hand, her fingers barely touching his. "Thank you, dear," she said, the words utterly devoid of warmth. She then turned to Tanya. "I'm going to watch my show." She walked away without another word, leaving him on the doorstep with his wife. Tanya looked at him, her eyes hard. "Don't ever make me feel like I have to beg you to take care of my family, Damon. You knew what you were signing up for when you married me." She went back inside, leaving him alone on the porch. He stood there for a long moment, the smell of cut grass mixing with the faint scent of diesel on his clothes. He felt like a stranger, an outsider whose only purpose was to fund a life he wasn't truly a part of. He got in his truck and drove home, the foundation of his marriage trembling beneath him. He didn't know it yet, but it was already broken beyond repair. Friday, June 3rd. The Houston air was thick and heavy, promising a thunderstorm. The time was 5:17 p.m. Damon stood on the small concrete porch of 124B Memorial Trace Circle, the envelope in his hand feeling damp from the humidity. He was tired. It had been a long week of wrestling with a stubborn Kenworth T680, and all he wanted was to go home, take a shower, and sit in silence. He raised his hand to knock, but stopped. He could hear voices from inside. muffled but clear through the thin wood of the front door. It was Tanya and Gloria. Tanya must have come straight from her office. A pang of something, annoyance, jealousy, hit him. She was here, relaxing with her mother, while he was running errands after a grueling day. He paused, his knuckles hovering an inch from the door. He shouldn't listen. It wasn't right. But he was frozen, held there by the cadence of their conversation. And then I told him, "It is what it is," Tanya was saying, her voice edged with a familiar, weary frustration. Damon's stomach tightened. She was talking about him, about the rent increase conversation. "He gets this look on his face, Mama, like the whole world is ending because he has to take care of his family." Gloria made a sound, a short, sharp laugh that held no humor. "Oh, honey, don't you worry about that look. Men get that look. It's just for show. He's not going to do anything." "I don't know," Tanya said, a sliver of doubt in her voice. "He's been quiet lately, moody." Then came the words that changed everything. Gloria's voice dropped, becoming conspiratorial, but it carried through the door with perfect, devastating clarity. "That's how you know it's working. The quiet is acceptance. You just have to be firm. We were firm, and now look, 6 years. He's trained now, Tanya. He knows the rules. He'll huff and puff, but on the first of the month that check will be here. He won't stop. He's too invested." Trained. The word wasn't a word. It was a physical force. It slammed into Damon's chest, knocking the air from his lungs. He felt his vision tunnel, the edges blurring, the manicured lawn, the neatly trimmed hedges, the expensive-looking wreath on the door. It all faded into a gray haze. The only thing in focus was the sound of his wife's response. Tanya laughed. It wasn't a big laugh, just a small, complicit chuckle. "I guess you're right, Mama," she said. "He's a good man, predictable, trained, predictable." Damon stood motionless on the porch. He was no longer a husband, a partner, a son-in-law. He was a trained animal, a reliable machine that dispensed money once a month. His kindness wasn't kindness, it was a conditioned response. His sense of duty wasn't noble, it was a weakness they had identified and exploited. The $104,000 wasn't a lifeline he had generously extended. It was the cost of his own training. He looked down at the envelope in his hand. Check number 72. The paper felt alien, like a prop from someone else's life. His signature on it felt like a forgery. A sudden cold clarity washed over him, extinguishing the hot shame in an instant. The confusing logic that had governed his life for 6 years snapped into perfect, brutal focus. For every action, a reaction. For every input, an output. They had provided the input. Contempt, manipulation, exploitation. It was time for his reaction. He didn't knock. He didn't slide the check under the door. He slowly lowered his hand, his fingers closing around the envelope. The first fat drop of rain hit the concrete porch with a dark splat, then another. He turned his back to the door that separated him from the 2 women who had just redefined his entire marriage, and walked away. He walked down the flagstone path, the rain starting to fall faster now, plastering his thin work shirt to his back. He got into his F-150, the engine turning over with a familiar, loyal roar. He put the truck in drive, and as he pulled away from the curb, he looked at the duplex in his rearview mirror. He felt nothing. The part of him that felt obligation, resentment, and a desperate need for gratitude was gone. In its place was a quiet, cold, and methodical calm. The mechanic in him was taking over. The problem had been diagnosed. It was time to strip it down to the bolts and rebuild. The drive home was silent. The rain was coming down in sheets now, the wipers of his truck beating a frantic, rhythmic pulse. He didn't turn on the radio. He just drove. The conversation he'd overheard playing on a continuous, silent loop in his mind. He's trained now. He won't stop. When he got home, Tanya's Honda was not in the driveway. She was still at her mother's. The house was quiet. He walked into the living room, to the small oak desk where the ritual began. He took the envelope with the $1,450 check out of his pocket. It was slightly damp. He placed it carefully on the desk. Then he went to his bedroom closet and pulled down the $79 fireproof lockbox. He sat on the floor, entered the combination, and opened it. Inside were the neat stacks of photocopied checks, 71 of them, bundled by year with rubber bands. He took out the damp envelope, opened it, and unfolded the final check. He now held all 72 payments in his hands, a paper trail of his loyalty, a ledger of his foolishness. He didn't feel anger anymore. That had burned out on the drive home, replaced by an unnerving sense of purpose. He was moving into the next phase, strategic restraint. He knew with absolute certainty that a confrontation would be useless. It would be a storm of tears, accusations, and gaslighting. Tanya would twist his words, call him a liar, and accuse him of eavesdropping. Gloria would play the victim. He would be cast as the villain, the monster who was trying to tear their family apart. He would not give them that satisfaction. He would not play their game. He would play his own. When Tanya came home an hour later, at 7:23 p.m., she was carrying a Tupperware container. "Mama sent you a plate," she said, her voice light. She was in a good mood. She walked into the kitchen, and Damon followed her, his heart beating a slow, steady rhythm. She put the container in the refrigerator. "Did you have any trouble finding the place?" she asked casually, not looking at him. This was the first test, his first lie. He leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms. "Nope," he said, his voice even. "Easy trip." "Good." She turned around, finally looking at him. "Did you just slide the check under the door? I told Mama you'd probably do that." "Yep," he said, meeting her gaze without flinching. "Slid it right under." The lie was surprisingly easy. It felt like shifting a gear, a clean, mechanical motion. "Okay, she was worried, you know, with the rent increase coming." "I'm sure," Damon said. He felt a chilling detachment, as if he were watching himself in a movie. This man, calmly lying to his wife, was a stranger to him, but he knew this stranger was his only way out. The weekend passed with a surreal sense of normalcy. They did yard work on Saturday. He re-oiled the deck, a $40 can of Thompson's water seal, his only expense. She planted new flowers in the front beds. They watched a movie on Netflix that night on their $2,800 sectional, and she leaned her head on his shoulder. He didn't pull away. He sat there, a statue of a husband, every nerve ending screaming. He was gathering evidence, and her every normal action was another exhibit in his case. She had no idea she was living with a ghost. On Sunday afternoon, her phone rang. He saw Mama on the caller ID. He kept his focus on the football game on TV, but his ears were tuned to her conversation. "Hey, Mama." "What? He didn't?" Tanya's voice was tight with confusion. "Are you sure? Did you check the mat? Maybe it slipped all the way into the living room." She listened, her brow furrowed. "That is so weird. He told me he dropped it off Friday night. He said he slid it under the door." A pause. "No, I believe him. Why would he lie about that? It must have gotten lost." Another long pause. "Okay, Mama, don't panic. The 5th isn't until Tuesday. I will talk to him as soon as he gets off the couch. I'll call you back." She hung up and turned to him. The manufactured peace of the weekend was over. "Damon?" He turned to her, feigning mild interest. Yeah? That was Mama. She still can't find the rent check. He put on his best confused face. What? That's impossible. I put it right under the door. I remember the feeling of the envelope catching on the weather stripping. He was a surprisingly good actor. He was describing an action he had only imagined. Well, it's not there, she said, her voice rising with anxiety. She's looked everywhere. Could you have dropped it on the porch? I don't think so, he said, shaking his head. I'm sure I put it through. This is strange. Do you think someone could have taken it? He planted the seed of an alternate theory, a way to deflect and buy more time. Who would take a check made out to a property company? She said, dismissing it. This is a disaster. She's going to get a late fee. The landlord is such a stickler. I can call the bank on Monday and put a stop payment on it, he offered. I'll just write her a new one. This was the critical part of the act. He had to seem willing to fix the problem. Tanya seemed to relax slightly. Okay, yes, do that first thing in the morning. I'll tell her that's the plan. God, what a mess. She walked away, dialing her mother again. He turned back to the TV. He had survived the weekend. He had lied 3 times, each lie a carefully placed stone on the path he was building. The original check, check number 72, was still sitting on his desk, a small, powerful piece of evidence. He had the weekend, he had the lie, and he had the check. Now he needed a professional. On Monday morning, he wouldn't be calling the bank to stop a payment. He would be calling an attorney to start one. At 9:05 a.m. on Monday morning, Damon was not at the garage. He had called his boss and taken a personal day, something he hadn't done in over 3 years. He was sitting in a plush leather chair that probably cost more than his monthly salary, in a high-rise office in downtown Houston with a panoramic view of the city. The glass tower felt cold and impersonal, a perfect reflection of his new state of mind. Across a massive mahogany desk sat Marcus Thorne, Esquire. He was a sharp, impeccably dressed black man in his late 40s, with a reputation for being a shark in a courtroom and a brilliant strategist outside of it. He had been recommended by one of the owners of the trucking fleet Damon serviced, a man who had been through a messy business dissolution. Thorne's hourly rate was a staggering $550, a number that made Damon's stomach clench, but he knew he couldn't afford anything less than the best. On the desk between them was the gray lockbox. Damon had already explained the situation in a calm, flat voice, detailing the 6 years of payments, the lack of gratitude, and the conversation he had overheard. He spoke like he was describing a faulty engine, focusing on facts and figures, leaving out the heart-wrenching emotion. Marcus listened intently, his fingers steepled, his face unreadable. When Damon was finished, the lawyer was silent for a long moment. "And you have records?" he finally asked. "Yes," Damon said. He reached over, opened the lockbox, and pulled out the bundles of photocopied checks. He had also created a spreadsheet on his home computer, a simple Excel file detailing every single payment, check number, date, amount. The total was at the bottom in bold, $104,400. He handed the spreadsheet to Marcus. The lawyer took the sheet and his eyes scanned the columns. He then picked up one of the bundles of copies and fanned through them. Each one was a clear, crisp image of a check from Damon's personal account, made out to Memorial Properties, LLC. "You did this every month?" Marcus asked, a note of genuine surprise in his voice. "Made a copy?" "Every month," Damon confirmed. "I also have the bank statements from my personal account showing every single one of these checks clearing." Marcus leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Mr. Damon," he said, his voice a low rumble of appreciation, "you are not a mechanic, you are a forensic accountant. This is magnificent. This is the cleanest paper trail I have ever seen." So there's something you can do? Damon asked. Something I can do? Marcus chuckled. Damon, your wife and mother-in-law made a critical mistake. They assumed your kindness was a weakness, but they coupled that with another, far more dangerous assumption, that you were unsophisticated. They never imagined you would be this meticulous. He leaned forward again, all business now. Here's the situation. In Texas, when there is no written agreement, a transfer of money can be considered one of two things: a gift or a loan. The burden of proof is on the person claiming it was a gift. Their entire case would rest on the idea that any reasonable person would assume a man paying his mother-in-law's rent for 6 years was giving her a gift. And was I? Damon asked quietly. That's the multi-thousand-dollar question, isn't it? Marcus said. Their argument for gift is the family relationship and the duration. Our argument for loan is much, much stronger. First, the payments were consistent, regular, and for a specific purpose, rent. This looks like an installment plan. Second, and most importantly, they were made from your personal account, not a joint account. You, Damon, paid this money, not you and your wife. Third, and this is the beautiful part, you have documented every single transaction. This shows intent. You weren't just casually handing over cash. You were tracking it. He tapped the spreadsheet. What we are going to do is recontextualize these payments. We are not going to ask for the money back. We are going to inform them that this was a loan and present them with the bill. We will draft a formal demand letter. It will state that the sum of $104,400 advanced by you for the benefit of Gloria Jackson is now due. We will add interest, calculated at the Texas statutory rate for judgments, which is currently around 5%. That adds a significant amount to the total. Damon did the math in his head. Interest on that amount over 6 years would be tens of thousands of dollars. The letter will be sent via certified mail with return receipt requested to both your mother-in-law and to your wife. Marcus continued. We send it to your wife because she was complicit in securing this loan and benefited from the arrangement by having her familial financial burden lifted. She is a party to this. The letter will give them 30 days to contact my office and arrange a payment plan. If they fail to do so, we file a lawsuit for unjust enrichment and breach of verbal contract. Damon felt a wave of relief so profound it almost made him dizzy. It was real. It was a plan. It was not a messy, emotional fight. It was a cold, hard, legal procedure. They will call you, Marcus warned. They will scream. They will cry. They will threaten. You will not answer your phone. You will not respond to texts. You will direct all communication to my office. Your only response to any direct contact should be, "You need to speak with my attorney." Can you do that? Yes, Damon said, the words solid and sure. Good, Marcus said, picking up a pen. Let's start drafting this letter. They wanted you to be predictable. Let's give them something they never could have predicted. For the next hour, they worked, crafting the language of the letter that would detonate the life Damon had known, and begin building a new one from the ground up. The $1,100 he paid for those 2 hours with Marcus Thorne felt like the best investment he had ever made. The strike was coordinated with the precision of a military operation. On Thursday, June 9th, 6 days after Damon had walked away from Gloria's door, 2 identical letters were sent out from Marcus Thorne's downtown office via USPS certified mail. One was addressed to Ms. Gloria Jackson at 124B Memorial Trace Circle. The other was addressed to Mrs. Tanya Washington at the home she shared with Damon. Damon had spent those 6 days in a state of suspended animation. He went to work. He fixed a fleet of refrigerated trucks, his hands sure and steady. He came home. He ate the dinners Tanya made, answering her questions about his day in monosyllables. He had told her he'd handled the check situation, a vague statement she had accepted, assuming he'd just sent a new one. The tension in the house was thick, but Tanya attributed it to his moodiness over the lost check. She had no idea what was coming. The first letter was delivered on Friday afternoon at 2:42 p.m. A mail carrier knocked on Gloria's door, holding a clipboard and the green and white certified envelope. Gloria, annoyed at the interruption to her afternoon soap opera, signed for it impatiently. She saw the return address, a law firm, and felt a flicker of confusion. She opened it in her hallway, her eyes scanning the dense, formal text. The letter was a masterpiece of cold, legal finality. R.E. Demand for repayment of personal loan. Dear Ms. Jackson, this firm represents Mr. Damon Washington. We are writing to you concerning a series of financial transactions between yourself and our client. From May 2016 to May 2022, our client, Mr. Washington, advanced the sum of $1,450 per month for your benefit, specifically for the payment of rent at your residence. These 72 payments were made from his personal financial accounts. These cumulative payments, totaling $104,400, constitute a verbal loan agreement. Our client has meticulously documented each transaction. Pursuant to Texas Finance Code, we are now formalizing the demand for repayment of the principal amount, plus accrued interest. The calculated interest, based on the statutory prejudgment rate compounded annually over the loan period, amounts to an additional $28,710.53. $28,710.53. Therefore, the total amount due and owing to our client, Mr. Damon Washington, is $133,110.53. $133,110.53. You are hereby directed to contact our offices within 30 calendar days of receipt of this letter to arrange a formal payment plan. Failure to respond within this time frame will result in our firm initiating legal proceedings against you for unjust enrichment, breach of contract, and other applicable claims without further notice. All future communication regarding this matter must be directed to my office. Do not contact Mr. Washington directly. Sincerely, Marcus Thorne, Esquire. Gloria read it once. Then she read it again. The color drained from her face. Her hands began to tremble. The heavy paper shaking. $133,110.53. The number was nonsensical, a joke, a typo, but the letterhead was real. The legal language was terrifying. She stumbled to her couch and collapsed onto it, her heart hammering against her ribs. Her first call was to Tanya. Tanya was in a quarterly marketing meeting when her phone buzzed. She ignored it. It buzzed again, and again, and again. 5 missed calls from Mama. Annoyed, she excused herself and stepped into the hallway. She saw a string of frantic texts. Call me now. Emergency. Call me. She called her mother. Mama, what's wrong? I'm in a meeting. He's suing me. Gloria shrieked into the phone, her voice hysterical. Damon? He sent me a letter from a lawyer. He says I owe him over $130,000. What? Tanya felt a wave of dizziness. That's crazy. You're not making sense. A lawyer? Why? The rent. He's saying the rent money was a loan. With interest. He wants it all back, Tanya. All of it. Tanya's world tilted on its axis. It couldn't be true. Damon, her quiet, predictable Damon, would never do something like this. Mama, calm down. You must have misunderstood. Let me get home. I'll figure it out. There's no way this is real. She rushed through the rest of her workday in a fog of disbelief and dread. When she pulled into her driveway at 5:45 p.m., she saw it. Another certified letter, this one sticking out of her own mailbox. Her hands shook as she tore it open. It was identical to the one her mother had described. She read the words, loan agreement, principal and interest, legal proceedings, and felt a rage so pure and hot it nearly blinded her. She burst through the front door. Damon was in the kitchen, calmly washing vegetables in the sink. He looked up as she stormed in, his expression unreadable. "What is this?" she screamed, waving the letter in her hand. "What in the hell is this, Damon?" He turned off the water and dried his hands on a towel, his movements slow and deliberate. "You should probably talk to my attorney about that," he said, his voice quiet. "Your attorney? Your attorney?" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "You are suing my mother. You are suing me for the money you gave us. Are you insane?" "I didn't give us any money, Tanya," he said, and his calm was more infuriating than any anger could have been. "I paid your mother's rent from my account for 6 years. I have the records. It was a gift. You did that for your family, for me." "Was it a gift?" he asked, his eyes holding hers. And then he deployed the line he had been holding for a week. "Or was I just trained? I thought I was just predictable. I thought I wouldn't stop." Tanya froze. Her face went white. The sound in the room was just her own ragged breathing. She stared at him, the bravado and rage evaporating, replaced by a dawning, sickening horror. He had heard. He knew. You were listening," she whispered. "I was dropping off the check," he said, his voice still quiet, but with an edge of cold steel. "The check that's still in the lockbox in our closet, by the way. The one I slid under the door." She stumbled back, speechless. The entire lie, the entire week of deception, was laid bare. He had been playing a different game all along, and she had never even seen the board. Her phone began to ring again. It was her mother. Tanya looked from the phone to her husband's cold, resolute face. The trap had been sprung. There was no way out. The voicemail started to come, a cascade of panic and fury. The first was Gloria, crying. "Tanya, call me. What do we do? What is happening?" The second was angrier. "This is insane. He can't do this. You have to talk to him, Tanya. Fix this." The third was pure pleading. "Please, baby, just make him stop. I can't pay this money. I'll be on the street." Tanya sank onto a kitchen chair. The letter crumpled in her fist. She was no longer a co-conspirator. She was a co-defendant. Damon watched her, his face a mask of detached finality. The mechanic had found the source of the noise, and he had just ripped it out of the engine. The consequences cascaded with the brutal efficiency of a legal machine. Tanya and Gloria, caught completely off guard, scrambled to react, but they were amateurs in a professional's game. Their emotional appeals and angry demands were useless against the wall of Marcus Thorne's calm, implacable competence. The first domino to fall was Gloria's housing. The 5th of the month had come and gone. The rent was late. On June 10th, the day the letters arrived, a 5-day pay or vacate notice was taped to her door by the landlord of Memorial Properties, LLC. The notice demanded the $1,450 rent, plus a $150 late fee. Gloria, in a panic, called Tanya. "You have to pay it," she cried. "Just for this month. We'll sort out Damon's nonsense later." Tanya, looking at her own finances with new, terrified eyes, felt a cold sweat. Her take-home pay was about $2,800 a month. Their mortgage was $2,200. Her car payment was $350. After her own expenses, she had almost nothing left. Paying her mother's $1,600 bill was a mathematical impossibility. For the first time, she felt the crushing weight that Damon had been carrying, alone, for 6 years. She transferred the money anyway, draining her meager savings account, which held just over $2,000. It was a temporary plug in a dam that was already cracking. The second consequence was the legal reality. Tanya, refusing to believe Damon would go through with it, tried to talk to him. She alternated between tearful apologies and furious accusations. "How could you do this to us? To our marriage?" she'd pleaded one night. "You should speak with my attorney," was his only reply. He had moved into the guest room, creating a physical and emotional chasm in their home. Desperate, Tanya and Gloria scraped together $3,000 to consult with their own lawyer, a man who worked out of a small office above a laundromat. He reviewed Damon's demand letter and his own copy of the meticulous spreadsheet Marcus had attached. The lawyer was blunt. "Your position is extremely weak," he told them, his face grim. "He has an unprecedented level of documentation. Every check, from his personal account for 72 straight months. His claim that it was a loan is very, very credible. Your claim that it was a gift rests on—" "What? That he was a nice guy? That's not a legal defense. You're looking at a huge loss here." He charged them a $500 consultation fee to deliver the bad news. The 30-day deadline passed. No payment plan was offered. Marcus Thorne, true to his word, filed the lawsuit. The moment the suit was filed, it became a public record and a pending liability. Tanya and Gloria tried to get a consolidation loan to pay him off. They were denied by 3 different banks. The reason cited was the pending litigation and their combined low income against the massive new debt. Tanya's credit score, once a respectable 720, plummeted to the low 500s. The dream of a life of casual luxury evaporated. She was now facing a future of financial ruin. The eviction was next. Tanya couldn't make the July rent payment for her mother. She simply didn't have the money. Another pay or vacate notice appeared, and this time there was no saving grace. In early August, Gloria Jackson, 66 years old, was formally evicted from the duplex she had lived in for over a decade. Damon saw the eviction crew's truck parked outside one day as he drove by on his way to the grocery store. He saw her furniture, the couch, the old TV she'd complained about, boxes of belongings, piled on the curb. He felt a brief, sharp pang of something that might have been pity, but he pushed it down. This was not his doing. This was the consequence of their own choices. Gloria was forced to move into a cramped $850 a month one-bedroom apartment in a rundown complex in South Houston, miles away from the prestige of Memorial. The security deposit and first month's rent were paid for by a loan from her sister, a loan she had no clear way to repay. The legal battle was short and brutal. Faced with the mountain of evidence, Tanya and Gloria's lawyer advised them to settle. They had no defense. A settlement was reached where they officially acknowledged the debt of $133,110.53. A judge ordered their wages to be garnished. A percentage of Tanya's marketing salary and Gloria's meager Social Security check would now be sent directly to Damon every month. It was a small amount, less than $600 a month combined, but it was a constant, humiliating reminder of their defeat. But the final, most elegant consequence was yet to come. The owner of the Memorial duplex, it turned out, was an over-leveraged investor. With Gloria's unit now empty and the real estate market turning, he defaulted on his own loan. The duplex at 124B Memorial Trace Circle went into foreclosure. 6 months later, on a sunny Tuesday morning, Damon stood on the steps of the Harris County Courthouse. He was there for the foreclosure auction. Using the first few $1,000s of the garnished payments, combined with the money he had saved by not paying Gloria's rent, he had secured a small loan. When the auction for the duplex came up, he was the only serious bidder. He bought the entire property, both units, A and B, for $285,000, a steal for the Memorial area. The deed was in his name alone. 3 weeks later, a new sign was posted in the front yard. It read, For rent, inquire within. Washington Properties, LLC. Damon Washington was now the landlord. 2 years passed. The Houston sun felt different now, warmer on Damon's skin. The weight on his shoulders was gone, replaced by the quiet confidence of a man who had reclaimed his own life. He was no longer just a mechanic. He was a property owner, a small-time entrepreneur. He had rented out Unit A of the duplex to a young family, a teacher, and a firefighter, for a fair market price that was still less than what the previous landlord had charged Gloria. He took pride in being a good landlord, fixing a leaky faucet the same day it was reported, ensuring the lawn was always perfect. His life had been rebuilt, piece by piece. The divorce from Tanya had been finalized a year and a half ago. It was a quiet, sad affair. The court had divided their assets. She kept the $2,800 sectional sofa. He kept his 2014 F-150, which now had over 220,000 miles on it and still ran like a dream. He had sold their bungalow in the Heights and used the profits to pay off the loan for the duplex. He now lived mortgage-free in Unit B, Gloria's old unit. He had repainted the entire place, a neutral, calming gray. He'd torn out the old carpets and polished the concrete floors underneath, giving the space a clean, industrial feel that suited him. The wage garnishments continued, a small, steady stream of money arriving in his account each month. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the principle. It was a monthly, documented acknowledgement of the truth. He had met someone. Her name was Simone, a landscape architect with kind eyes and a laugh that made him feel instantly at ease. They met at a community garden in the 3rd Ward, where Damon had started volunteering on Saturdays. She was a black woman whose luminous, dark skin seemed to draw in the sunlight. Her hair was a crown of beautiful, intricate locks, and her hands, like his, were often smudged with dirt. She loved that he could identify an engine problem by sound, and he loved that she could name every plant and tree they passed. Their love was built on acts of service. He changed the oil in her 2018 Subaru Outback. She designed and planted a small, thriving vegetable garden behind his duplex. They didn't talk about his past much, but she knew the broad strokes. She understood that his quiet nature was a form of strength, not weakness. One evening, sitting on his back patio, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, she took his hand. "You're a good man, Damon Washington," she said simply. And for the first time, he felt truly seen. One day he got a text from a number he didn't recognize. "It's Tanya. Can we meet? I need to give you something." He hesitated, then agreed. They met at a quiet coffee shop on Kirby Drive. She looked different, thinner. The expensive clothes were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a t-shirt. Her hair was pulled back in a simple puff. She looked tired, but the hardness in her eyes was gone, replaced by a deep, settled sadness. She pushed a small, crumpled envelope across the table. "This is from my mom," she said. "It's an apology letter, and I'm sorry too, Damon, for everything, for not seeing you, for not appreciating you, for what we did." Her voice was barely a whisper. "You were a good husband, the best man I've ever known, and I broke it. We were so wrong." He looked at her, the woman he had once loved so fiercely. He felt no anger, just a quiet, bittersweet sense of finality. "I forgive you, Tanya," he said, and he meant it. "I forgive you for my own peace, not for yours. I hope you and your mom find your way." He accepted her apology, not as a bridge back to a past life, but as the final closing of a door. He never read Gloria's letter. He didn't need to. He left the coffee shop, got in his truck, and drove toward his home. The home he had inadvertently bought with 72 installments of misplaced loyalty. True wealth, he now understood, isn't measured in dollars, and sense. It's not in the size of your house or the brand of your car. True wealth is respect. It's gratitude. It is the peace that comes from knowing you are valued for who you are, not for what you can provide. Some people will always see kindness as a resource to be mined, a weakness to be exploited. The greatest strength is learning to recognize them, and then, with quiet, clerical finality, closing the account. You have to be the mechanic of your own life, willing to diagnose the problem and brave enough to make the repair, no matter how difficult it seems. Have you ever had to make a hard choice to protect your own peace? Share your story in the comments below. We can all learn from each other's strength. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of love, betrayal, and the quiet triumph of justice.